Hi, Ray.
Hello, hi Deborah, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today and to share with our audiences at Fête Chinoise about your newest film. It's such a heartfelt piece. Just even the opening scenes and given the time of year, 中秋节, that it is now, it's all the feels. Like I felt every moment of that film.
Thank
So thank you. I wanted to first get to know each other a little bit and, share about yourself and our platform. So I read that you grew up in Hong Kong and studied in England. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself as just as a person and as a creator?
Oh, okay. Well, I grew up in Hong Kong until I was 13, and then I was sent to a boarding school in the UK, which I've written a script about that, but not being made yet. So one day you will know more. And so yeah, so and then I went to a university there and study law and then work in the UK. But because I'm a very good Chinese boy, so therefore I did law because that's what my parents wanted. And then, but all the time I realized that I wanted to do something that is movie or arts related.
Mm,
So I always love movies. So after at a certain point in my life, I decided that, well, you have achieved what you wanted to do, but now you have to move on and do what, achieve what my parents wanted me to do. And now you have to move on and do what you want to do. So
mm.
that's when I start making films, at first in a very independently, and then later on I realized that I wanted to go to study it more. So I went to New York and I went to Columbia and did an MFA.
Oh, wow. That's such a rich journey, right? Of discovery, self-discovery, self like actualization. Well,
Yeah.
I'm very glad that you decided to do what you wanted to do as well, on top of what your parents wanted you to do.
I
Uh,
think it's very relatable, especially for a lot of Asians, because our parents always have such high expectations of us and then wanted us to achieve what they believe is the best for us. So, we can totally understand that because they are also from a different era where things were very different for them. And of course, didn't realize that nowadays, you can do all kinds of things and you can still be very, very successful in all of them.
Yeah, no, that's really amazing. And you're right, like the sub narrative of just, that pressure of the the Asian parent and then achieving that and then moving on to the arts. It's there's more commonality in that than we think sometimes. Which
Yeah.
actually, before we get into some of the questions I had prepared, talking about being a lawyer and studying law before, obviously that was weaved into this film. There was a moment where it just really hit me in the heart. I won't spoil the storyline for those who are watching who haven't seen it yet, but when the lawyer shares a moment with Angela and Ying, and I felt my heart stop because I felt like the law was so cruel. And I felt like law is so black and white. And can you talk a little bit about like having been a lawyer, factor into some of these things that you're trying to like bring to the surface?
Well, yeah, I mean the topic itself, of course, is about sort of like legal rights in Hong Kong. Like a little bit background about writing the script is like in 2020, I went to in Hong Kong, I went to a talk about the Hong Kong LGBTQ inheritance rights or the lack of it. And
Mhm.
so basically in Hong Kong, they don't recognize same-sex marriage. And even though you're married overseas, it's difficult to get any recognitions at all. And of
Mm,
course, in Hong Kong, a lot of the older couples, they don't really believe in it or didn't really think that it applied to them. So of course,
mhm,
there's trouble when one of them suddenly passes away, and then the other one will have all these issues with the family members. And so
mhm,
in some of those cases, because after that talk, the speaker quoted a few cases. So I spoke to him and said, do you mind introducing those people to me? So he did, and I interviewed them. And
mm,
the stories were quite shocking because a lot of those family members, originally, they were very, very close and they just turned overnight.
mhm,
So that made me wanted to write a script about it. I mean, of course, the legal part is important, but it's also about human relationships. It's when a situation arises where people suddenly have to fight for their own benefits and rights, and then it becomes very, very, they change very quickly, let's put it this way, um, and quite cruel, to be quite honest. So after I heard the stories, I thought I should write about it, but I didn't really want that family members to reflect the reality so much, because in the real world, the stories I heard were much more cruel. So, so I want to make the audience at least empathize with the family members a little bit. Yeah. So to answer your questions about the legal part, I think having that kind of legal background certainly did help me when I was devising the plots and the scripts. But also, I mean, that is certainly part of it. You know, I mean, the movie is certainly not like a lecture or about law, legal rights or anything. It's like I said before, it's much more about relationships and how when that rights are taken away and how that affected the people, not just the LGBTQ communities, but everybody surrounding them are also affected as well.
I can definitely empathize with you and in the film, and just every character in the film, and how they had their moment of their own tension of their own value system, right? And how to navigate how they're really feeling and the pressures of Hong Kong society, right? And real estate. And wow, he did such a great job of really tugging at the heart, and all of us can relate to each character, really, right? In the selfishness, in the selflessness, and these issues are every family goes through them, no matter how immune a family thinks they are from these issues, myself included. Like, it'll happen to you at some point, right? And yeah, I think you did a really good job of telling what was like it is a complex story, but it's simply told, and then it just shocks you at every point about the human nature of how they react. So, but backing up a little bit, I know a lot of people got to know you as a director through your film in 2019, which had a lot of, like, a considerable amount of success. Did that success change how you approached making this film, like All Shall Be Well? And do you think the landscape of LGBT representation in Hong Kong has shifted since then, and your role in shifting that? Like, can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, yes, I know. I mean, thank you first of all, which is called Twilight's Kids in North America. Yes, I think unfortunately when the movie came out was during COVID, so it wasn't as widespread as it could have been. But yes, I think it did well, and it changed something because, of course, when I approach actors, unlike before, when I did I first moved back to Hong Kong and nobody really knew who I was. So I had to cold call everybody. Basically, I cold call everybody. So when people ask about cold calling, cold call works. That's how I so
That could be a film in itself.
very thick skin. Yeah. So yeah, all the actors I cold call at that time. So it was very difficult. This time, of course, is different because with the success of all the actors got nominations at Golden Horse, the main actors and lead and supporting actress Patra also won at the Hong Kong Film Award. So of course, actors would like to work with me now. So it was much easier when I approach actors. But of course, you still have actors saying that, oh, it's an LGBTQ role. I can't do it because I can't face my fans, still get that, but in that way it's easier. In terms of finding funding, no, it's just as hard, in a way harder, because because the prejudice is still there. Simple as that. Is people just say that, well, it's LGBTQ, so therefore it's a very, very niche market, and therefore you really can't get an audience. You get to hear that all the time. When I was making Twilight's Kiss, people said, make a lesbian movie, there's more audience for that. When I was making this one, they say, oh, make a gay movie, more audience for that. So there's many different ways to say no.
Well, I think you illustrated that reaction pretty well throughout the film too, like dotting all those moments where, whether it's her parents or other people, or the funeral home director, or like all those people who sort of judge, or she had to shy away from admitting that this is her, her partner. I thought it was just so subtle, like done with such taste, but it is truly the undercurrent, like the reactions that you receive and the pressure that you have as an LGBT community member. Like, you just don't have that same level of comfort that other people would get if you're not that. So I thought you did that really well. Like what you just outlined is actually in the film as well in terms of the reactions.
I mean,
And
I mean, even though if you are already someone who is very proud of your identity and very sure about it, like myself, right? And if I go to a funeral and when the whole setting up is so traditional and conservative, even in that situation, I'll find myself stepping back because like you also want to pay respect to the dead and you also want to pay respect to the person's family members and or the tradition, and you will automatically slip into that role very easily. So let alone someone who is not like me, who is slightly embarrassed about, their identity or slightly, don't want people to know and all that. Can you imagine that? Person would
yeah.
immediately be very, very quiet and almost people would call it submissive. But, if in that situations, maybe most people would.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's very true because like even in the film, the way you set it up in the beginning, it's very easy to get into the film and easy to understand their relationship because it's just so gentle the way that it enters. And then when you're shocked with that, all those emotions and questions start bubbling up to the surface. Like you're sure of your identity, of the love, and everyone was so happy together. And then suddenly, like there's embarrassment, there's like a shy away, there's all these feelings bubble up. And I felt like I was bubbling with the character, and it was just done captured so poignantly and so beautifully. Now in terms of like your approach to the research, like to get to tease out all these like nuances, can you tell us more about your approach to the research? Like I know that you did a lot of research since COVID and looking into a book that we searched online called Oral Histories of Older Lesbian Women in Hong Kong. So like tell us like some of the things you found and your approach to the research.
Well, because like I said earlier, I went to that talk and then the speakers introduced me to those cases, and therefore I decided to write the script. And I realized that, okay, those are the few people that I interviewed, but that is a very special cases. I need to get a broader ideas about what, especially like if I was going to approach a lesbian world in Hong Kong that I wasn't particularly familiar with, that I should really, really get more people to talk to. So therefore I met up with Denise Tan, who is a professor at Lingham University in Hong Kong. And she was researching this book that you just mentioned, the oral histories of lesbians in Hong Kong. And so it was, again, a lot of it's luck that she was exactly at the same time doing such a research. So we worked together and she was able to introduce me to some people that she interviewed. And then it became a very, very a good collaboration because then after I've written the script, I actually conducted table reads, and then I would invite some of those people I interview and some of the people that I didn't interview to the table read and listen to the story and gave their comments. And it was a very, very successful way of doing it because originally Angie only have one friend who is married and straight. And then the lesbian group, they said that that is very, very unlikely that would happen. They said because for a woman in that era who was there to not marry, talking about in the 70s or 80s, a Chinese woman in Hong Kong decided not to get married and went out and lived with another woman, she would be a very black sheep in the family, and she would very, very likely to be cut off to a certain way. So therefore, it would absolutely needed her own support group, like a close-knit of women who are very similar situations, mostly lesbians, that they will be their chosen families. That will be more closer to the reality. So therefore, I changed the script, and therefore, in the movie, now you see that Angie will have a very sort of like strong, close-knitted friends instead of a straight woman friend.
That's very that's interesting. So how about the actors themselves? Did they also get to sit at those table reads, or like, how did they get, like, how did the process include them so that they could also, acclimatize to something different?
No, I don't. I at that point we haven't cast it yet because the writing process was much earlier on, and then to be honest, when you're writing, you don't even know when or how this movie will ever happen because You just never know. So much of it really depends on so much. So no, we haven't casted the actors yet, so they were not involved. But when we came to after finishing the casting of Petra and Maggie, who played Pat, I put them together, and then we did some workshops. And so in order to prep them, in order to be open to each other and get to know each other.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, they did such a great job portraying the roles. It was fully believable. Like it just felt like, you just felt for them. And you're right, capturing that era, right, of in the 70s, 80s, like not being married and living with another woman, which I thought was told through the parents really well and the family really well. And speaking of all those different characters, like your film presents the characters from different perspectives. So there's no like one definite villain. Like there's not one person you can just hate on and like call a jerk, just various viewpoints. And the absence of like a formal, like led to that reliance on people's consciousness. Like I feel like my conscience was very active throughout the film. And it creates that complex dynamic of like struggle, right? And so how did you approach these themes in the film to encourage viewers to like was it an active intention for you to encourage viewers to empathize with the characters? Because so many moments I felt like I was right there with them, like I'm part of that family and I'm feeling what they're feeling.
Yeah, I think one way that I do, because like the story is not like action or thriller or suspense where the plot is very important. More important is about the relationship between the different characters. So spend a lot of time developing each characters. And what I do is that I write all the main characters very quite detailed backstory. So that because like we at this stage in our life, a lot of our decisions that we made are really based on our own experiences in the past, our childhood, what we wanted then, what we lacked then, and all those things all grouped together to make us who we are today and make the decisions we make today. So I was thinking that that is very important to have a significant backstories that tell all the important moments in their lives. So I did that, and I gave it to the actors so that, and then they have to read to each others during the workshop so that they also have created a common history amongst them. It's like you have your best friend. You might not know everything about your best friends, but you do know all the significant events in your best friend's life. So when you start talking to your best friends, all the words has a lot of deeper meanings. You might just say something very, very simple. It's like, oh, you change your hairstyle. So if I just give that line to an actor without the backstory, they just read it. Oh, you have a nice haircut. But when I knew that the backstory was that actually I used to practice my haircut on you and to make you ugly on purpose. So when I say that line, that has a lot more meaning because your reaction would be completely different. It's like, oh, are you being sincere or are you trying to laugh at me? Instead of just that line. So you see, so all that things is it really helps the actors, I think, to get to know their characters and also know how to react to the other actors' dialogues.
Actually, now that you've said that's absolutely mind-blowing because having those like deep biographies of imaginary characters really helps them to give that context. Now that you're talking about it, I also remember those moments in the beginning where I'm like, oh yeah, like why are these phrases they're so average, right? It's what you would tell your spouse or your kid at the dinner table, like, oh, they bonk, whatever, WeChat or whatever, because I don't know how to press it, right? I'm like, oh, that sounds like my dinner table. And but there's subtlety there and yeah, it's just that underlying family relationship was captured really, really well. And not only that, on the relational level, like you also were able to make a huge commentary on societal issues, right? Because the film tackles the societal issue, but then keeps the story so tight and so focused. So you mentioned before the importance of leaving room for the audience to interpret. Can you talk about how this approach enhances the film's emotional impact on people?
I think one of the ways that we use is by not putting music in the film. I think that really helps because we really give the audience a moments of silence to really think about what just happened. In a lot of
Mhm.
movies that they put music in there because they think it will make it, I don't know, easier to accompany the scene or feels it's just necessary. But I think, well, in real life, we don't have music playing all the time. And, you know, you go to a gallery, there's no music. It's just you absorbing the painting and bringing your own experience and your own, you know, ideas about a particular picture and how that affects you. And I think movies should be like that as well. And so after a particular incident that happens in the movie, I mean, we have pauses, like we have sceneries or something that happens that is not very, you know, storytelling moments, but we don't use music so people can really just sit there and really digest what just happened and how that affects the audience themselves and how that affects the protagonists.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely is true. No wonder I was literally, as that screen turned, again, and I don't wanna give away anything, I could hear my heartbeat and hear the thoughts racing in my head. I'm like, "No!" And it's because of the silence. It's probably because of the silence. And, yeah, the pacing was it really helped you to digest and take in every single moment and every single phrase that was uttered by each character, and some moments more shocking than others of what came out of the mouths of the Tantek, right? Like, on the Chihuahua, right? And some of them, it's unbelievable. But I agree with you, your earlier comment, like, you already dialed it down, like, there's much more cruel cases. This is already very, very mellow,
Mm.
very, very mellow. Now, the film touches on universal themes like the loss of loved ones and managing heritage. While many family and heritage core values in Asian culture are very set, very traditional, I believe Asian audiences in Canada will resonate with these themes. Now, obviously, the idea of LGBT discussions, I think in the Asian community are starting to become more normal, just like how mental health is something that used to be taboo, but then now can be discussed. Have you received any interesting feedback from viewers who might not be familiar with Asian and Chinese culture on how those two worlds collide or like, anything at all in this department?
Well, actually, the movie premiere in Berlin and the screening, we were a bit worried because the audience is quite international, and we thought, wow, would they be able to get all that? And it's very funny that one of the very first questions that a guy said is like, "Oh, I can totally relate this movie, and I am straight," he said, "and I actually had a girlfriend, and we have lived together for a long time, and she passed away. I actually had to go through the same thing." And I was like,
Mm,
wow, okay, it's so universal. It's not just like I said earlier, it's not about the gender identity. It's not just about the legal thing, but it's actually the emotional thing when you go through when your life partner passed away and there is no legal protection. Suddenly your world changed, and all those people you thought that you were families and friends, suddenly they all turn on you or treated you very differently. I think that is something that not a lot of people realize. And even in a heterosexual world, that could be the same, that you have a lifelong partner and you always thought all your partner's family members really treated you as a family member. But when it changes, then you see, wow, my God, all these things are very different. And let alone if there's no legal protections, then the whole thing will become very, very messy, I guess. So when that guy said to me, I was, oh, wow, this is quite interesting. I didn't really think about it, that actually this story could be so universal as well. In terms of about the Chinese culture, I think, of course, audience would ask questions about, oh, is it the LGBT situations in Hong Kong still that bad? And how come there's no legal rights? I mean, they usually would ask questions like that as well. Yeah.
mhm, mhm. And I mean, I think how about like the Asian culture at large too? Like, the part where, well, I don't want to give away too much, but the part where to bury somebody, the argument about, feng shui and all those other traditions, like, were any of those interesting or was there any feedback on, is that really the case, in Hong
I think
Kong
in
still
Hong
today,
Kong
2024?
particularly, because well, when it comes to death, it's a very, very bizarre situation because a lot of people suddenly become, I won't say it's not the word religious, but I think they will want to follow whatever is the tradition because they didn't want to upset anything in case it brings bad luck or brings
Mm,
bad luck to the people, or maybe just out of respect. So you have very, very intelligent, highly educated people who would go through the very tower system of burial and all those kind of things in Hong Kong, and they charge a lot. They really, really charge a lot, and people still go through it. And so, like when I was doing the research, I would go to a lot of the columbariums or funeral parlors just to do research. And every day, every hour, there's still people doing those rituals. And a lot of those people are doctors, lawyers, and you think, oh, okay, people, when it comes to that kind of situation, I think because everybody is very vulnerable, and therefore it's very easy to just go along with whatever has been planned without really want to think about it or make questions or raise questions.
Well, that's very interesting because it's true. The vulnerability in that moment when you've lost somebody, just going with the notions, right? It doesn't matter how educated you are, you're still human at the end of the day. You're just sorting through your reactions and the sorrow, and you just kind of go with the flow. Yeah, there's
But
so
there's
much
also
of that.
fear, right? Because they also said things like, oh, if you don't do that, the disease will not be settled or will not be that would immediately you go, okay, I just want whatever the best is for the disease because I'm already missed or I already feel so sad. So whatever you say, if that makes the disease feel better, I would do it.
Yeah. Which is both like playing on the emotion of the situation, but also it reflects another societal commentary, right? Like a lot of people, well, actually the brother calls him a sanguan, right? And I think a lot of people feel that way about some of these stories that come out of Hong Kong sometimes where people are tricked, right, into giving up lots of money for these things. Actually, I wanted to ask you, why did you name the film All Shall Be Well? Like without giving away the story, like because for me it just feels so fitting with the mood of the movie, and I love it, and I wanted you to give you a chance to talk about why that was the
I think they're different. I mean, some people read it as like, oh, all shall be well. It's like at the end of the day things will turn out okay, but I actually have another very ironic reason for it is that when I was doing the research, I met up with a lot of LGBT couples who have been together for many years. So I asked them, have you made a will? And then they say no. I said, how come? So they give me a really bizarre answer saying that, well, if I pass away, my sister would know what I wanted or my brother would know. I said, okay, that's interesting because this is your partner here with you for 30 years. But if you are not around, you think your sister is going to know what to do for the benefit of your partner? So they go, yeah, I think they would know. All will be fine. All shall be well. So I thought, okay, that's too optimistic. So therefore, I call it All Shall Be Well as a very ironic answer, title, because I think people are a lot of the cases are too optimistic. In Hong Kong, a lot of people do not make wills because there's a fear, of course. And also, a lot of them just say that, yeah, I think my sister would know, my family would know what I want. But if you're not around, they don't know, or they don't exactly know. Or it's easy for them to say they don't know. Or they know,
or in this case,
but not what for the benefit of your partner.
well, in this case, the partner knew, but then she doesn't have the right to execute any of it because, right?
Yeah. Many
it's
cases like that. Yeah.
You know what though, like that assumption or that sentiment of like joke, and it's very, there's an omen to it. I personally haven't gotten past it myself, and when all my friends with young kids also like, oh, did you do your will yet? I'm like, oh, that's something I have to grapple with myself. But I also realized it's like
a will is
it's
something that you should
protection.
do when you are young.
Yeah.
Because you feel it's very far away. So that you do it, it's fine, late, and you are beginning to really worry about it. But you should also see it as a love letter. That's how I tell people. See it as a love letter. If in case you're not around, then at least that person received that letter, and it tells that person how much you have been thinking about the benefit and how much you want to protect them. So what's more romantic than that?
Yeah. Or loving, right, to your children or to the people that you want to care for. It's true. Let's see, recasting that dreadful idea of a will in Chinese culture as 充滿愛嘅一封信is like, like a love letter. Wow, like that's so romanticized. And actually, I think that would help me too. So thank you for that. But yeah, like, so how about for yourself? Like, do you have any personal attachment? So I know you encountered these themes, and obviously there was so, but personally speaking, is there a personal attachment to anything in that movie that you want to express, that you wanted to express through the film, to do with yourself and your own story?
Well, I think it's about having the equal rights, really. I think at the end of the day, it's very, very basic because, again, it's like one interview that I did. There was a woman who spent years trying to fight for the rights that she has. Eventually, she did get the allowances, but it wasn't very much, and it wasn't worth the amount of time and energy that she put in. So I asked her, why was it worth it? And she said, yes, it was very, very worth it because I wanted to tell the world that our relationship existed. It happened. I didn't fight for it, that family members could tell the world that we were never a couple. It never existed. But my relationship existed. 我哋係有名有份嘅, she said. So that's why it was important for her. And I think that's exactly in everything I do, really, like from the LGBTQ film festival to So and all the movies I make is really just to have the equal rights, equality, and anti-discrimination. I think that is something that's very personal to me.
So when you're working with actors and like when it's so personal, like when they're when they're playing something like leads, right? Playing LGBT lovers, like how do you direct them to capture the authenticity in their roles? And like, are there any scenes that for you, like, so the whole movie, by the way, is beautiful. It's so beautiful. I need to watch it again in the theater, right? Like big, but like it's like, what stands out to you the most as the most memorable moment? Again, maybe without giving it away, or we can release this later.
Well, it is the very, very last scene in the movie, actually, because in that scene, we have Pat and Angie. They were sort of like in a sort of like in a park, and it was raining quite hard, and then they have like a heart-to-heart conversation. I think that's the most memorable scene because it was scheduled to shoot on the very last day, and the very last scene we were going to shoot. And originally, that scene wasn't in the last scene of the movie, however, but when we shot it on that day, it was raining very hard and was very different from what we wanted. So we had to shoot it in kind of like a gazebo. And inside there, then it was getting dark. So I said, well, we have to shoot it. So let's do it. So they did it. And in one take, they did it so well. I think it was because it was the last day of the shoot. So they had all that emotion. So when they did it, it was like perfect. And then I said, okay, for the safety of the camera, let's do another take. And so they just went for it and they did this kiss, which I thought was brilliant. So I think that was the most memorable scene because it also happened not the way we wanted, but ended up being better.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many scenes that capture that Hong Kong feeling, and that one is like that rainy, like feeling of, well, when I'm there anyway, like it's always been very rainy, and it's just like that moodiness of all the different like settings. I think he also captured Hong Kong really well, like both some of the the more difficult situations, whether it's living condition, right, but also the really beautiful side of the greenery, even the cemeteries there, right? Like it's an experience. It's much more of an experience than what I've experienced here, at least in Canada. Now, just two more questions. So you returned to Hong Kong from England and started filming in Chinese language movies. What's that experience like? And do you feel more comfortable filming in the local context? Like, how has that been producing films in Hong Kong?
Well, it's very different from shooting in the US, of course, because in the US you have unions. That makes it very, very hard because a lot of rules and then regulations and guidelines, and also permits and all that makes it a lot more difficult to shoot in many ways, particularly because we are low budget production. I mean, had we been a bigger production, it might be different. But in Hong Kong, because of that low budget production and people are very, very willing to rush things for you. Hong Kong still have a very can-do spirit. So people will say, okay, let's do it. And they don't need to break for lunch. Well, not a whole hour, half an hour, they are willing to do it, or just work while they're eating a rice box, and then they don't need to break for tea for 45 minutes or things like that. And also because the place is very small, so you can move a set quite quickly. You can move 3 sets in one day. So all that makes shooting in Hong Kong much easier. But my issue is because I can't really write Chinese. So I have
Neither
to
can I.
write English, and then I get someone to translate it and then send it to me, and I read it very slowly, and then recorded the dialogue and send it to him, and then he rewrite it and send it to me. Very involved, the whole process. Very time consuming.
No, I fully understand. I empathize with you. I'm Canadian born, so I read it very slowly too. But because of beautiful films like yours, I can read more.
Here and talk about it fluently. I just can't write it well.
I mean, do you plan on? Sometimes though, you're not the first one to say that, and I think sometimes it always almost breeds more excellence. Like sometimes something that's harder to achieve sometimes spawns more excellence. So you're not alone in that. All the diaspora stories that go around the world, and people of Chinese descent are everywhere, right? And the language still is able to unite in film, in literature, and it makes magic in its own. It finds its way to make magic. So you've managed to find that way, whether it's translated back and forth 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. Do you plan to keep making films in Hong Kong? Are you looking at projects in other places? I mean, you're bilingual. You can go anywhere in the world.
Yeah, both. I am actually I got a script, but it's difficult to get funding anyway. So they're both out there. One is in Hong Kong, one is overseas. They're out there look for funding. So yeah, hopefully something will come through.
Yeah, well, I mean, we hope you produce in Canada, and maybe we can collaborate. But we also wanted to send a heartfelt congratulations for winning the Teddy Award, and it's exciting to see All Shall Be Well being shown around the world. And if you have a chance to come to Canada when Illume Films has it up in the theaters, we'd love to give you a little hurrah and a warm welcome. I think that as somebody who, with parents who are from Hong Kong, and we are first generation here in Canada, there used to be a theater that was in a Chinese mall here, and it was very exciting to see movie posters that were from Hong Kong or China up, and you could buy popcorn that tasted almost like Hong Kong because it had that sweetener, but it tastes like Hong Kong honey specifically. But that closed many years ago, like over 2 decades ago. And when that happened, there was like this void, and you could only get DVDs, whether they were legitimate ones, which I tried to buy, right, or lots of places where it was not legitimate for a long time. But now the world is more connected. Passionate distributors like Illume Films are bringing these films to big theaters, mainstream theaters in North America and Canada. So we're so excited, and we hope that as a director and producer, that you come and meet and greet with some of our viewers, because there is an amazing audience base here. Some of them are very active and you'll see them online, but there are a lot of quiet observers, and they've been waiting for this moment where Hong Kong film, it's literally it feels like fireworks lately. Like there's so many great films are coming out from Hong Kong. And I think it's that richness of the generation maturing like yourself, and bringing that all that global perspective, but yet that local context, and putting it back on the world stage. And it's very, very it means a lot to many of us. So I'm really grateful for your film, and I wish it the most success.
Hello, hi Canada. Hopefully you guys will like All Shall Be Well. Come and watch my movie. The movie has been on in Hong Kong for 18 weeks already. So come and watch it and see why they like it.
Thank you so much, Ray, for your time today, and all the best. We look forward to all your films coming up. And for everyone watching, make sure you watch this one. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Nice connecting.